Hi everyone, and welcome to Dentist's Coffee Time. Today we're going to talk about something absolutely fascinating, facial aesthetics. We're going on a little journey together, starting in the art studios of the Renaissance with Leonardo da Vinci, and tracing that path all the way to the modern dental chair. It's a story of art, science, and the timeless search for what makes a face truly beautiful.
You know, it's pretty amazing to think that over 2,000 years ago, the Roman statesman Cicero said, "Everything is in the face." And man, was he right. Our face is our calling card to the world. It's how we express ourselves, how we connect, and for basically all of human history, we've been on this quest to understand what makes a face harmonious. What is that secret sauce?
And that really brings us to the heart of our discussion today. Real facial harmony isn't just about an artist's gut feeling, and it's not just about cold, hard numbers either. It's this beautiful dance between two worlds. Artists, the art, the intuition, and scientia, the science, the measurement. When you bring these two together, that's when you can create something that's not only technically perfect, but also genuinely, breathtakingly beautiful. All right, so here's what we've got on tap. We'll start with those timeless rules of proportion from the old masters and see how they stack up against modern science. Then we'll dive into decoding the horizontal lines of the face, explore the hidden geometry of the smile arc, and finally, we'll bring it all together to see how this stuff actually works in clinical practice.
Okay, let's dive right in. Now, believe it or not, our story doesn't start in a dental clinic. Nope. It begins in the art studios of the Renaissance. You had masters like Leonardo da Vinci who weren't just incredible artists, they were also brilliant anatomists and mathematicians. They were totally obsessed with figuring out the mathematical code hidden within the human form.
What they developed is what we now call the classical canon. And this wasn't just some loose guideline of what looks good. No way. This was a serious, deliberate attempt to turn beauty into a formula, into a set of precise mathematical rules and ratios. They truly believed that beauty wasn't just random, it was governed by universal laws, and if they could just crack the code, they could recreate it perfectly in their art.
And maybe the most famous and long-lasting of these rules is the rule of vertical thirds. This was an idea championed by artists like Da Vinci, and it's pretty simple. It says that a perfectly balanced face can be divided into 3 equal horizontal sections. This one idea has been a cornerstone of how we look at faces for centuries.
So these 3 sections are really clearly defined. The upper third runs from the hairline down to the eyebrows. The middle third goes from the eyebrows to the base of the nose, a spot we call this subnasalia, and the lower third continues from the base of the nose right down to the bottom of the chin. According to that classical canon, a flawless face would have a perfect 1:1:1 ratio. Everything perfectly equal. All right, so now let's see what happens when modern science takes on these classical ideals. For centuries, that 1:1:1 ratio was the absolute gold standard. But what happens when you test that beautiful artistic ideal with the precision of modern science? This is where a field called craniofacial anthropometry comes in, which is just a fancy way of saying we're going to measure the heck out of the human face.
So, this begs the big question, right? Is this perfect 1:1:1 ratio a fact of human anatomy that we can actually observe in the real world? Or is it more of an artistic fiction, a beautiful but maybe unattainable ideal? Well, let's stop guessing and look at what the data actually tells us. And what's so cool is that while the Renaissance artists were remarkably close, modern research shows us a reality that's just a little more nuanced. That perfect 1:1:1 ratio isn't really the norm. Instead, we see some interesting variations based on sex. In males, that lower third of the face tends to be a little longer, giving a ratio closer to 1:1:1.2. In females, it's also a bit longer, but less so, coming in around 1:1:1.1. And this isn't a flaw, it's just a beautiful reflection of natural human variation.
And this scientific fine-tuning doesn't stop with the major facial thirds. It goes all the way down to smaller but super important details like the lips. The classical canon suggested a perfect 1:2 ratio for the height of the upper lip to the lower lip, but modern data from measuring lots and lots of people shows the average is closer to 1:2.3. It seems like a subtle difference, but these are exactly the kinds of details that help us build a modern, evidence-based approach to aesthetics.
Okay, so we've covered the vertical dimension. Now, let's shift our focus 90 degrees and decode the crucial horizontal lines of the face. This is where we start to find the parallelism and harmony that really makes a smile come alive.
There are 2 horizontal lines that are absolutely fundamental here. The first is the interpupillary line. Just picture an imaginary line running straight through the center of both pupils. The second is the incisal line, and that's the line that connects the biting edges of your upper front teeth. The relationship between these two lines, it's a game changer for a harmonious smile.
So here's the key. For our brains to perceive a smile as balanced and correct, the incisal line should be perfectly parallel to that interpupillary line. If the line of the teeth is tilted at all, what we call a cant, it can be a major aesthetic disruption. It just looks off. That's why achieving this parallelism is such a huge goal in aesthetic dentistry.
But I'm sure you know what's coming. We have to ask the same question we did before. Is this aesthetic rule a universal truth? Does everybody naturally have this? Or is it another one of those guidelines that has some exceptions out there in the real world? Let's see what the research says.
Well, a study of dental students in Brazil found that about 70% of them naturally had parallel interpupillary and incisal lines. So what does that tell us? It's not 100% absolute, everybody has it rule, but it is the dominant pattern by far, which makes it an incredibly strong clinical guideline to aim for.
Now we get to a really cool, more modern evolution in how we think about aesthetics. This is a concept that really started to gain steam after the year 2000. And it marks a huge shift from looking at the smile as a straight line to understanding and appreciating its beautiful, natural curve.
This concept is called the incisal arc, or you'll often hear it called the smile arc. It's that imaginary curved line that you can trace along the edges of the upper front teeth. Aesthetically, the goal is for this arc to run perfectly parallel to the curve of the lower lip during a smile. When you get that, you create this gorgeous, harmonious relationship. And here's the core idea. A flat, straight line of teeth can actually look aged or even artificial, and it's often a result of years of wear and tear. In contrast, an arc that gracefully follows the curve of the lower lip is a true hallmark of a vibrant, youthful smile. It's a much more dynamic and natural goal in modern smile design.
So, we've traveled through history, art, and science. But how does all of this translate from an abstract blueprint into the day-to-day world of dentistry? Why is it so important for a dentist to be part artist and part scientist? Let's connect all these concepts directly to actual treatment.
Okay, to really get the clinical side of this, we have to define a key term, the vertical dimension of occlusion, or VDO for short. It's the foundational measurement. It's simply the vertical height of your face when your teeth are biting together. Here's why it's so important. When teeth wear down, or if they're lost, this dimension collapses. And what does that directly impact? You got it, that lower third of the face we talked about at the very beginning.
And this is where it all clicks into place. When a dentist is designing a set of complete dentures for a patient, they're not just replacing teeth, they are literally rebuilding the VDO and restoring the proper height and proportion to the lower third of the face. Or think about a full mouth reconstruction for someone with severe tooth wear. The dentist is using these principles to reverse the signs of facial aging caused by that collapsed VDO. And in pretty much every cosmetic case, they're using the ideas of horizontal lines and the smile arc to make sure the final result looks harmonious and natural, not just white and straight.
So really, we can boil this entire diagnostic process down into a simple, memorable 4-step framework. First, you assess the vertical proportions. Check those facial thirds. Second, you check the horizontal planes. Make sure you've got parallelism. Third, you evaluate the dynamics of the smile. You're looking for that beautiful smile arc. And finally, and this is the most important part, you apply all of these findings to create a smart, aesthetically driven clinical plan.
We've explored all the science and the art behind beauty, but we all know there's more to it than just ratios and parallel lines. There's character, there's emotion, there's a unique individuality in every single person. So we'd love to ask you, beyond all these principles, what are the intangible qualities that you believe truly define a beautiful face or smile? Let us know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. This is Dentist Coffee Time. Bye-bye.